Welcome to the third installment of my Lunch and Learn series, surviving basically the divorce process, how to navigate, how to heal, and how to move forward from the divorce process. So I just wanted to go over a couple of things. I just wanted to remind everybody that today's session is being recorded. And I want to apologize ahead of time. I've got a sick kid at home and I've got a cat who really wants to come in. And so I apologize in advance for any background noise or distractions. But that's, yes, as you said, Claire, that's life. So I want to just jump right in and welcome our fabulous guest speaker today, Claire Eliassen from Audacious Therapy. And I will let Claire introduce herself a bit more and we'll jump right in.
Thank you, Kat, for having me. I'm so grateful to be here today and get to talk about, ultimately, how do we have good relationships with our kids in the midst of all of these things. I've been a therapist over 10 years, and I've worked with kids my whole professional career. And I love supporting especially kids and overwhelmed moms so that we can be our audacious selves.
I love that. I love that. And this is such an important topic that we're talking about today. Telling the truth, how age-appropriate honesty protects your kids, which is a topic that so many of my clients are constantly curious about, right? And so this is just a near and dear topic to my heart. So I will let you take it away.
Great. I think it can be really challenging, and I also still think it's so important. And I think when we've experienced conflict, divorce, abuse, lies in our families, it's even more important, I think, to work on finding ways of talking with our kids about these things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on the next slide, I have some why do I think telling the truth is important things? And some of it feels really obvious, but I like to go over that because, right, when we practice telling honest things, right, it builds reliability with us, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Honesty can be clarifying. Our guts know, if something's true or not. And as a parent, I think I want to also help my kids know their gut so they can know the truth, so they can know their gut, kind of backwards, forwards. And I think when we practice that, it teaches them that.
Yeah. Especially, go ahead.
That was it.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, especially in circumstances like a lot of my clients are dealing with, when there's typically an unhealthy parent who engages in a lot of gaslighting the kids, gaslighting the healthy parent. And kids are really smart. They can tell when you're not being honest with them. They can, their intuition is really strong when they're little. And so there's typically somebody working against that intuition in these dynamics that I work with a lot. And then there's a parent who's doing everything they can to help build their child's intuition and support that so that they are future proof from, being victim to one of these kinds of relationships themselves.
Yeah. So, right, supports our gut instincts. I think when we tell the truth, right, and then kids experience that, it can boost self-esteem too, of I thought something was going on, it is, or I thought that was the case, but yes.
Yeah, totally.
Grounding, building trust, showing our kids how to accept responsibility, right, can be a way too when we model not being perfect.
I love that.
They watch and learn.
Yes, they do. And kids love to hear about their parents being imperfect. Yeah, they have us on this pedestal and they just love to hear stories about when we were kids and we did something that wasn't so perfect. And so I think that really helps them build trust and connection with us and see us as a human, right? Instead of an idol, which is really healing.
Ultimately, when I think about this, the goal, I would say, around all of these things is that we balance the age-appropriate part of honesty with compassion, context, creating a safe environment so we get to keep being connected with our kids.
So important. Connection is what it's all about.
Yeah. All right. Some brief tips that I would give when you start thinking about like having to have a conversation with your kid. In general, I think about serious conversations. Do it keep it to as many minutes old as the kid is. Right.
Oh,
So if you're
wow.
having a combo with a 3-year-old, your goal is 3 minutes or less. Right. 5-year-olds, 5 minutes or less, 15-year-olds, 15 minutes or less, right? If everybody's tracking and it feels like you're flowing, you can go longer than that. But it's honoring attention spans, their age. They're just like, these are not long conversations if they don't have to be. And if your kid starts to be like, mom, all done, come back
I've
to it.
never heard that before. That's such a helpful, easy to remember tip.
I feel like it's a good guideline, right? Like just because we can chat for 30 minutes about something that they can't do. So,
And it
or
helps us
maybe,
be concise too, right? Like we tend to put more words into what we need to say than is actually necessary, right? Yeah, that's a great tip. I love that.
other thoughts would be minimize details, focus on facts and the big picture for kids, whatever it might be that you're trying to like give information about. Because also sometimes the details matter, but like really big picture. And we'll get to the next slide in a minute, but I have some like core big picture focusing questions to think about. And I wanted to throw in here, I think it's okay if there's different versions of the truth. It's actually common when there's conflict with anybody. But when we tell our version, if we ask about our kids' version, right, all of these like staying connected kind of through it.
Yeah. And do you encourage us to name that for our kids?
I think there's sort of like developmental ages when kids can begin to sort of get that, right? So
Yeah.
like the younger they are, um, they really want there to be one thing, right? And that's
Mhm.
helpful and grounding for really like 5 and under
Okay.
ish would be my age, right? And I think the older then they are, then you can be like, it seems like what you thought happened and what I thought happened, if right, even if you're just talking about conflict between the two of you, right? Like what we did not experience the same thing. That can be a way to start to say, like, there's different ways this goes down. And
Yeah. I love that honesty. I love how to say that too. Yeah. Perfect.
yep. On the next, yeah. So here's some just possible really big picture things that I think can be helpful to consider from the kid's point of view, right? Like that you might want to think about answering in your 3 minutes or in your 5 minutes, depending on where you at in these conversations or what you're talking about. But like tell the kid, am I safe and taken care of? Right? Like, oh, we have to move. We're gonna find a house. It can be as simple as that. We will find a
Mhm.
place to live, or we are going, that kind of thing. Or I'm not picking you up from school. You will be picked up from school. That kind of
Mhm.
very, are they taken care of? Am I loved? Right? Like, hey, I love you. This didn't go the way I wanted. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or whatever it is. How does this change my life? Right? So, like, whatever it is from the kid's point of view, because that's where I think parent details and kids' details vary.
Yep.
This changes my life in that I don't get the favorite dinner that I wanted. Oh, that sucks. Right? That's might
Yeah.
be as much as they need to know. Or whatever it is. Is it my fault? That can be a good one to sprinkle in, like, this isn't because of you, or whatever.
Yeah.
What do I do if I'm not safe? Big picture things.
These are the questions that kids are probably asking themselves. Aside from the last one, what do I do if I'm not safe? I can imagine every kid is asking themselves, even subconsciously, some form of this list. And so I think this is a great list for parents to keep in mind when they're having these conversations. That's really beautiful.
All right, I typed up some examples here just in case, right? And I put a different thing at the bottom but 3-year-old, 7-year-old, 15-year-old. So 3-year-old, of course, they wouldn't quite say it, this question, right? Like, why don't you sit
Mhm.
next to dad at school events, right? They would they would have a different level of a question. But right, let's just say we honor good question. Dad and I aren't good friends anymore. I'm going to sit somewhere good for me. And I'm so glad I get to come to your school. I love you. I want to be with you, right? I want to be good with you. We're always going to be your parents no matter where we sit.
That's so great. And I love that you honor the question to begin with by saying, good question. I love that. We don't want them to be afraid to ask any of these questions. And this is a legitimate question that a lot of my clients are getting, right? Some of my clients are able to sit next to their ex-partner at school events. Some aren't. And then it sort of changes, depending on the situation at the time. And this is a real life example that so many of my clients are dealing with. My son asked me this question as well. And so this is a great example. I love this.
Yeah. And right, these are the like complicated ones, right? Around like, what do I say?
Mm-hmm.
Because the parent details, right? Like, oh, I'll tell you, I'm so glad you asked, right? Or whatever. But that's not what we're doing with our kids. Different
Right.
levels, I would say.
Yeah. And as I'm just looking at these example responses, right? 7-year-old, you have dad and I don't have a healthy relationship. So I'm not going to sit by him. I want to be there to support you. Does that make sense? I love asking the question, does that make sense at the end? Yeah. And none of these throws either parent under the bus, right? Which is so key. We never want to say anything disparaging about our co-parent, even if they are our abuser. But what all of this does is set a boundary. We can set a boundary, right? By saying, dad and I don't have a healthy relationship, so I'm going to sit over here. That's modeling boundaries for our kids too, right? Like if you don't feel comfortable or safe sitting by someone, you get to choose to sit somewhere else. That's really empowering for littles to see and have modeled for them. I don't have to sit next to, or I don't have to tolerate. I get to say what I'm okay with. That's huge. That's hugely protective.
Yeah.
I love that example.
Yeah. So even that, like, does that make sense? Or ending with some kinds of questions, like the second two, right? Like that can, again, is like, you're bringing it back to the kid to say like, what do you think about that? Can be
Yeah.
another interesting way to check in. But that means like, I'm trying to dialogue with you here. This isn't like, right, it can be decided, but also like, sometimes they're like, well, what about, you're like, oh, that's what you were asking.
Yeah.
Now I know what actually you wanted to know.
Yeah.
Or
That's great. I love that. Keep the conversation open instead of a lecture.
yeah, right.
That's beautiful.
For the 15-year-old, I tweaked the question because I think most of the 15-year-olds like often get it. Again, that's my overarching opinion. But like a 15-year-old might want to know, like, why don't you want dad to know where you go on vacation? Or why don't you want dad to know the password to our house? Or that's not the right call. Anyways, whatever, that kind of thing. So like, again, thank you for asking. What I put on here similar, but like,
Yep.
we don't have a healthy relationship. I don't trust him. Or that's like even honoring like privacy versus secrets.
Yeah.
And talking about how like now we're kind of separate. However you might talk about it for you guys, but like we're separate families or we're separate houses, and that means
Yeah.
not all the things go back and forth. You do, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so key. Another example that you and I talked about previously is the question like, why can't I bring the cell phone from my dad's house to your house? And I'm just using dad's example, because most of my clients are female bodied. But yeah, that's a really complicated answer, right? And we're not going to get into probably the nuts and bolts of reality, right? Like, we're not going to say to our 15-year-old, your dad is stalking me, right? We're not going to say your dad is tracking. Your dad is, I don't, we're not going to get into that. But what we do want them to understand is the boundary. And we want them to understand that we get to set that boundary, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense to them. And I think that the key is the kids don't always have to agree with this, right? Like
Yeah.
if there's the question, why can't I bring dad's cell phone into my house? Or why can't I bring, why can't I take the cell phone from my dad's house when we're going out or doing fun things? And, you can keep it really basic, right? Like, just like you have two homes, you have two cell phones. We're going to use this cell phone when you're here, and you can use that cell phone when you're there. Um, I feel more comfortable if things like a cell phone would stay at your dad's house. If you want to bring it here, that's fine. We're going to put it in this bag, and it's going to stay in the bag the whole time we're here. And let me know if you have any more questions about that, but you get to still have a cell phone, just not the one from your dad's house. We're going to use this one here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And right, like maybe this is obvious too, but like you get to change your mind as the parent, right? And you get to say, I don't know, let me think about it.
Yes. I think that, especially for a lot of my clients who are trauma survivors or still in active trauma, we're not always operating from our prefrontal cortex. So we don't always have a great answer right off the bat. I don't know. Let me think about that. I love that.
Mhm.
It's a
I mean, just
great,
parenting, right? Just parenting, plain. You're like, what are we even talking about? I don't even know. So
yes.
let me think about that.
Yeah, that's my daily experience of
And
parenting as well.
then come back, right? But come back to it. That's
Yeah,
important. Like that brings back to the like honesty and the reliability of like, I'm not just gonna stop the conversation with with the no end or no finish. I'm gonna
yeah,
say, oh, I thought about it. I
yeah,
need more time.
yeah. And if it's my kid, he's going to go, well, when are you going to tell me? Right? We will talk about it at dinner tonight, or I'm going to sleep on it. Let's talk about it over breakfast tomorrow. Right?
Mhm.
They want to know when.
Yeah. Yep. Uh,
um,
one thought before I touch on the resources, I think also just like you can say it's complicated. We
yeah,
had talked about that, Kat. Like, and I think
yeah,
that too is like, this is complicated.
yeah,
And some of that is parent stuff you don't need to worry about. Let me think about how to say it for you. Like I think you can model even that, like, you don't need to know all that. So,
right. Yeah. Well, and let's think about some of these other questions that we get, right? Like, let's go back to the very basic. Um, why are you guys getting a divorce? I love how you did that 3, 7, and 15-year-old example. Why are you and dad getting a divorce? What are your suggestions about that one?
like, it's, um, I think telling some version of your truth matters, right?
Mhm.
Especially for like the story you are telling for the years that you have to live through that story.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons I think it's important. So, like, we don't have a healthy relationship or we're not good, right? So, a 3-year-old, like, we aren't good, right? Sometimes I think for kids, it'd be like, you've noticed how much we're fighting, right? Or you've noticed how much we're not kind to each other, right? Or we were good and now we're not, or however you want to.
that's lovely. I like using basic words like that. Something that my clients and I talk about a lot is, for example, like the relationship wasn't healthy. Yeah. Which to me opens up a dialogue with the kids about what is healthy and what isn't. Like, what do you mean it's not healthy? Right? Um,
Yeah.
I didn't feel good about myself, or I didn't feel like, I could trust, right? I think kids have a really good understanding of the concept of trust. Like kids get it immediately without really having to explain it, right? Um, and it is okay to say that because again, back to the gaslighting principle, we don't want to gaslight our kids, right? Um, there's the chat GPT response to why you're getting a divorce. Sometimes mommies and daddies don't love each other anymore. And so they live in separate homes, but we that doesn't change how much we love you. And of course, that's a really important piece to add, right? You'll still get to, um, I'll still get to spend time with you. You still have a mom and a dad. There are things like that depending on what the situation is. But being really clear that things are going to look different. And, your dad and I are going to have different ways of doing things in our house, right? And to me, that's a really good, segue into other questions that a lot of my clients get. Why am I allowed to fill in the blank at dad's house, but not your house? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for a lot of my clients, the other parent is coercively controlling, and part of coercive control is love bombing, which means the kids get to watch as much TV as they want. They get to eat whatever they want. There's very little rules. And then they come back to the protective parent's house, and the protective parent has things like bedtime or,
Chores.
other healthy chores. Exactly. Other healthy limits in place. And I think it's okay to just come right out without ever saying anything negative about the other parent. Your dad and I have, there are things that are important to your dad that aren't as important to me. And there are things that are important to me that aren't as important to your dad. Right. So things look a little bit different.
And when you can
Uh,
ground those things in like your values, I
yeah.
think that can be really like that's truth for you. And like, I believe in responsibility. I believe in sharing. I believe in, what it doesn't have to be like, that's not necessarily the words you use with your kid, but like,
Yeah.
I think we work together in a family. I think that's one of the ways families work well together and we share responsibility,
Hmm.
which means,
Fill in the blank. Yeah. For
and
me
I
too.
imagine it's different at your dad's house, right? You can, or you've told me that it is. And what do you think about that? That might be a way to, you're still dialoguing, but you still get to hold the rules at your house.
Yeah. Yeah. And something you and I talked about last week was wondering, you know, wondering aloud in front of your kids to get them thinking.
Mhm.
So, like, I'll give you an example from my personal life. My son was 5. We're in the car. He asks me for something. I tell him, we're, I, I think it was he wanted me to buy him something that was insanely expensive. And I set the limit, the boundary, and just told him we weren't going to do that. He got very upset with me and told me that he wasn't going to love me anymore if I didn't buy it for him. And we had a really, age appropriate conversation about, um, you know, only loving somebody if they give you what you want is called conditional love. We talked about the difference between conditional and unconditional love, how parents aren't friends. Sometimes, parents have to make choices that aren't
Yeah.
things you're not going to like, but it's because we have to take care of you and that's our job. And we love you. And so we're going to make choices that you don't always like. And I just said, I wonder if that happens at your dad's house too. And he sat about it. He sat on it and thought about it for like 10 minutes on the drive home. And then he looked at me and he said, Mommy, I think my dad's trying to be my friend and not my parent because he wants me to love him more than I love you. Like 5,
Yeah.
you know? And instead of ever saying anything bad about dad, I just said, Oh gosh, honey, how does that feel? And he said, It feels really unhealthy. And this is a child who I left when he was 1.5. And so his whole world has been divorce, right? But
Yeah.
these are conversations about, um, to take this as an example of a 12-year-old. My dad buys me or my mom buys me a Nintendo Switch or, a PS4 every year for Christmas. How come you never buy me those things? My dad always gets me everything I want. How come you say no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And right. And like, how would we wonder out loud about that? Right. Like, I wonder, I wonder why, I wonder why you don't hear no very often. Like, what other
And
suggestions do
sometimes
you have
when
for
we
that, right?
wonder, right? Sometimes kids never answer it. And that's
Yeah,
what, like, I want to say as parents, right? Like, the gift of just saying it out loud doesn't have to force an answer, right? With our kids, but
yeah,
it plants those seeds that, like, they are germinating the whole time to be like, man, but I love that PS4. It's so amazing.
yeah.
And I want the car he's going to give me when I'm old enough.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but like, wait, oh, something, it's not right, or at least it's common that like those things are, the relationship is not the same, let's say when the love bombing is high.
yeah, totally. The connection isn't there. They don't, and that's typically what a lot of my clients are dealing with, right? Like the love bombing started out as intoxicating and fun, and then all of a sudden you expect there to be more than just the intoxicating and fun phase when it never really goes beyond that. Um, so I mean, I do want to talk about these resources because I think that
Mm-hmm,
they're really important. I think
mm-hmm,
that this is a topic where people are going to have a lot of questions for us. So I want to just let everyone know now, I forgot to mention this in the beginning. If you have a question, like if your kid has asked you something and you're wondering how to answer it, if you have a question for Claire and myself about how to answer a specific question, please put it in the chat. And our lovely moderator, Shruti, will pass that along so that we can answer that. But let's talk about these resources because they think that they're really, really great resources, especially for younger kids.
yeah. This kid's book is like a picture book. Actually, Kat, you probably can talk about it more than me. Um, but I listed it on here. And then, Kat, will you share the game that you play?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a game called I Know My Truth, and I got a version of this game from my mentor coach, Tina Swithin of One Mom's Battle. And it's all about how to make your kids impervious to gaslighting without them even realizing what you're doing. And so it starts off really simple, especially when they're little. You give examples of things that are true, and then you pepper in things that are not true to get them to sort of be able to call out. So, like, for example, the sky is blue. Yes. Um, you have a dog. Yes. Um, you live, on Maple Street. Yes. My name is Ricky Dicky Tat. And they're going to just laugh and go, no, 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 mommy. I know my truth. Your name is Cat. Right. And you just sprinkle these things in. And the idea is to get them to recognize when they hear an untruth. And it starts off really simple, but the older they get, the more complicated the game gets and the more nuanced things get, right? Like, um, you live in two homes. Yes. You have two parents that love you. Yes. All parents make good decisions all the time. I know my truth. That's not always true, right? And so it's something my son and I have been doing for years. And it really has helped him in the moment in unhealthy situations with his dad, and even with other adults, and even with me. Like sometimes he'll look at me and be like, I know my truth. You said that it wasn't healthy to do that, mommy. And I look at him and I'm like, yes, good job. If it doesn't feel right, if your intuition is telling you that what I just said or what someone just said isn't right, call it out, name it, say it out loud, right? I love that. It's such a
Mhm.
great game.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I listed here also two other like therapist parent supports that I think are really helpful. Dr.
Mhm.
Becky, you can find her in many formats, right? And same with Robin Go. So
Yeah, she's fabulous. I don't know Robin.
Robin, she her podcast I think is called Big Baffling Behaviors.
Okay.
But one of the things that I like she does is she talks about neuroscience in the midst of like connecting to our kids. So that part, I think, even if you're not like having big baffling behaviors with your kids, that part is helpful because she talks about like, are we responding from essentially like our calm brain, right? Our panicked brain or our like shut down brain? and where are our kids, and then how do we reground and connect, right, and like be our best selves.
I love that. That's great. I'm obsessed with Dr. Becky. I think I have taken every single parenting class that has ever existed. Um, just, you
That's
know,
a lot.
yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a bit of an embellishment. I know my truth. That's not possible. But Dr. Becky is guru for me. She has this theory, which she calls deeply feeling kids. And I personally think it's either code for neurodivergent children or children in active trauma. And the way that she handles the topics on how to talk to kids, and it's all punishment free, consequence free, really just learning, how to stay in connection with our kids through challenging moments and letting them know that they're safe with us, right? Um, because as you and I talked about, the number one ingredient needed to make a narcissist is shame. Narcissists are made, they're not born. And shame is the key ingredient to turn someone into a narcissist. And so, what I love about Dr. Becky's methodology is she really helps us connect with our kids in a way that just removes shame entirely. And so, if you haven't checked out Dr. Becky yet, yeah, she's guru. She's mecca. I love her. I do. It sounds like we have a couple of questions from the audience. Aaron wants to know if we can share the resources after this call. Absolutely. How do you handle questions raised by a co-parent's addiction behavior? Example, it's supposed to be a daddy night. Why isn't daddy going to be home? Or why does daddy always go out with friends instead of being at home? Oof, that's
Yes,
challenging.
this is where I think the truth is important.
Yeah. So how would you handle that?
In my opinion, right? There, and I think like maybe you titrate how, like, where are you at? How much truth have you already told or not told, right? I think is important, right? So if you haven't named that the other parent has some kind of addiction, I think there's a way to say that, right? Like maybe the kid has noticed, maybe the kid hasn't noticed, but I think to name like, like I'm working, let's see, with a middle schooler, right? And we just had to start by like, what does it mean to be an alcoholic? And the kid was like, oh, I know what that is. And I was like, right, you just didn't know there was a name for it. But that kid, right, like had a felt experience of it. She didn't have all the words when we started working together, but first naming it, right, that's truth telling. So,
Yeah.
right, hopefully without not shaming or blaming either, right, but you can do that with truth telling. So like, in this case, dad drinks a lot of alcohol and then he's not his best self,
Hmm.
right? And maybe you start with that much of truth. Have you noticed that, or do you know what that means? That kind of a thing.
Hmm.
um and dad's not going to be a safe parent tonight, right? That might be like one of these like next level things. Or I don't know, I'm so sorry, I just know he's not coming. How are you with that, right? And you circle back around to how's their life impacted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes kids can say, I have a guess, do you want to hear it? Some kids are like, no, I do not want to hear what you have to say, mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
What do you
and I think that's a situation like you were saying where it's really protective to tell the truth. And sometimes there's two versions of a parent, right? The sober version and the non-sober version. And it's key that our kids, because they can tell the difference, right? They know when a parent is not sober. Um, and how to talk about that, right? Like, have you noticed that sometimes your dad acts different? Yeah. Um, how does he act different? What do you notice? How do you feel when you're around him when he's like that? Is there anything you need from me? What would make you feel safer? What's one thing that I could do that would make you feel safer?
Yeah.
Right? Um, and it's just so many of my clients are dealing with substance use disorder, whether it's, Pot is legal in Colorado, so a lot of parents are high that are not, it's not illegal, but they're not present, right? They're checked out. And so kids notice. They're really, really smart. They pick up on everything. And so I do think it's important to have those conversations early on. That's really supportive. Yeah. I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you too. So let me just get my little list. Okay. For parents who are worried about oversharing, what are some red flags that tell you that you might have crossed from an age-appropriate honesty to too much information?
It's easy to do too. I'm an oversharer. So sometimes I think that age time limit, right? And then has your kid tried to change the subject? Have their eyes glazed over? Have they like started walking away? Any of those things. Those are signs.
Yeah.
Even just like pausing
Mhm.
and breathing in the midst of like, I have this hard thing to tell you, but sometimes we can catch ourselves when we're like, seems like I just gave you a lot of information. Should I stop?
Okay.
That's self-check, right? Even.
Yeah.
And then kids are like, no, I'm fine. And you're like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
And I love that you keep like calling us to name the thing. This is really complicated and this is a hard question to answer. So I'm going to do my best. I'm not perfect and I don't have everything figured out, but this is what I know so far. This is what I have figured out so far. Right. Because it's always in flux and we're always learning and we're always figuring it out.
yeah. I want to give all of my opinions to my 10-year-old. I have one of my kids is 10, and I want to give him all of my opinions. And so sometimes I even name that of like, oh, I have a lot to say about this. Do you want to hear it? Is like not the perfect question, but like, and we've built enough of a rhythm around like, okay, mom, I'm all done. But I'm so grateful, like he says that now, right? And then sometimes I have to be like, okay, I have one more thought that I have to tell you, but I push my limits sometimes when I'm like, actually, I didn't make the point I wanted to make, or like, I'm like, okay, we're going to have to talk about it later. We're going to come back to this. Sometimes is how I try to balance this, like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that
So
friend
good.
treated you poorly and I wanted to, and stop talking, mom.
Yeah. Sometimes friends are mean. We were talking about kids hearing different versions of the truth. And that is a circumstance that happens frequently in these scenarios. What suggestions do you have for parents whose child comes home repeating something the other parent said that feels confusing or manipulative or untrue? How would you suggest we handle that?
First breathe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just like, oh gosh, notice it, right? When we notice it, right, then we can begin to name things. Then we can begin to name things for ourselves and our kids, right? Like, so like one of the ones I've heard, right? Like, you think I'm the worst and I ruin all relationships, right? That was one parent told the story about the other parent. It seems like you came home and you're already mad at me. Even that,
Mm-hmm.
like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes you can say, like, is that what you heard about me? Right? Or did somebody tell you that? Or
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make sense with my truth. So I'm confused. Can you help me understand? Again, levels of what's the
Mm-hmm.
age and the conversation level that you're at.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry you heard that. That's not true. I wonder if this is something that you want to talk about. I wonder if that's why you said that. Yeah. Yeah.
Even
That's
like, does does that resonate for you? You
Yeah.
heard that from a grown up. You heard that from whoever, like, is that, what do you think about that? Right? That kind
Yeah.
of,
Is that your experience of me? Does that align with your experience of me? I think that's
even how
huge.
much does that align with your experience of me? Because, right, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm a mom and I yell, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah. Some kids are like more verbal processors than others. And so like something my son and I do is I say like, I'm gonna say something and I want you to tell me thumbs up if it's like 100% true, thumbs to the side if it's like sort of true, and thumbs down if it's not true at all. Because they don't always have words, but they can trust their gut instinct and their gut response, right? And sometimes I'll get like a in between 100% and sort of, right? And so, yeah, asking them to check in with how they feel about that is huge. I think we just got one more question too. I want to um how would one talk with a child when the co-parent promises a trip to Europe, but the safe parent won't allow a passport due to previous behavior of the co-parent taking the child out of state and not being truthful about the destination and cutting off communication for 2 days? Um, First of all, to whoever asked this question, I am so sorry that you're experiencing that. That sounds really, really scary. And, um, I think that this is a situation where, without saying anything bad about the other parent, there's lots of opportunity to set healthy limits and boundaries about what's safe and what's not safe. Um, and this is one where it's okay. Arizona, can you tell me how old your kiddo is? And just put that in the chat. Let me just see. Yeah, it says Arizona. He just turned 9. Okay. So, I think that it is good to start off by doing, what Claire and I were talking about is naming that this is a really complicated situation and that you're not going to be able to explain all the reasons why, but that, you know, sometimes grown-ups make choices that aren't safe. And sometimes parents disagree about what's safe and what isn't safe. And so, you 100%. And this is how I would talk about it with my son. And Claire, please jump in at any time. But
mhm.
like, I 100% support you having an adventure, and the adventure needs to be safe. And I have some concerns about you being safe on the adventure. And I wish that this was not a conversation that we needed to have. Um, and it's my job to keep you safe, even in a situation where you might be with your other parent and it's not safe. Um, and then like invite the questions. Like, what questions do you have about that? Do you always feel safe when you're traveling? Is there anything that's happening? Um, I felt scared when I couldn't talk to you for 2 days and I didn't know where you were. I wonder how you would feel if you couldn't talk to me for 2 days and you didn't know where I was. Wonder how that would feel for you, right? Yeah, yeah. He leaves him in the back of the plane by himself. Oh God, girl. Because he's a pilot and goes on standby. Wow. There are so many elements to this that are not age appropriate at 9. And um I have so many questions about what's in your parenting plan, what's being followed, what's not being followed, how you might be able to document the situation so that there can be follow through with safety plans. I have so many questions about that. There's so many unknowns, but yeah,
I have
based on what,
one. Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go for it.
no, no, no. I was just going to say, I have so many questions. I would really encourage asking your son questions about how he feels in those situations. Yeah.
Well, and I think praise, like, again, depending, yeah, he's scared. Okay.
Yeah.
So praise the heck out of him, plan with him, right? Around like, you're being so brave. This is hard. Anything that feels like you could do too, right? Just of like, this is hard, right? Like, you don't want to be, just like the mini part of like, did you know? I don't know, right? Sometimes a little example can go a long way. So, like, Europe's like way longer than the flights you've been on. And that means you're in the back by yourself, right? That's what you told me, you're in the back by yourself. You're checking, right? You're not like making things up, but like, that would be long. And as your mom, right? Like, these are decisions and the control I have, which is not all of the control that you want, right?
Mhm.
What's kids' control level, right? So maybe, right? Like, review his safety choices for when he does, no matter when he has to be in the back of any plane, right? But like, what would help him? But like, so that sounds like a really long time. And you're telling me you don't like being back there by yourself. And so then I think it sounds fun and I want adventures. And since I get this amount of control,
Mhm.
it
Two
seems like a
things are
no.
true. Yeah, two things are true. It's fun and it's scary, right? And then I always want to encourage kids to really use their voice and have some agency. I want I want all kids are my kids, right? All my clients' kids are my kids. All kids are my kids. And so my goal is empower kids to to know that their voice matters. Their words matter. Even if they can't get what they want all the time, they can always ask, right? So like I wonder if you talked to your dad about this. I wonder if you've talked to your dad about this. I wonder if you've told your dad that that makes you feel scared. And depending on the answer, I wonder what would happen if you told him how you feel about this. Yeah. And kids might have an answer. They might say, well, I did, and he didn't care, or I was too scared to talk to him, you know? And this is all part of the
Or I was
dialogue.
shamed for telling him that, like, I don't like that. And he said, aren't you, anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Okay. We have another question too. How would you encourage a child to have her own opinion in case of a manipulative co parent? Hmm. Good question, Cindy.
Sometimes there is peace in going along with your parents, right? Even at my house. The smallest thing, right? I make a dinner, my boys don't like it. And sometimes the peace is just eating the dinner because I'm more frustrated when they complain. Like, that's a small example, but I think that expands, right, on just family dynamics.
Hmm.
So I think there is a dance for kids between like, I just go along, right? And
Hmm.
how do I have my own opinion? When does that matter? When do I need to speak up?
Hmm.
And I think that like I know my truth or what's really important to me. Sometimes peace is the most important thing to a kid. So having my
Hmm.
own opinion is not peaceful. So I'm going to choose peace or having my own opinion. Right. And sometimes kids are like, I will not stop talking about my own opinions. And then I get in trouble, let's say, or conflict about
Hmm.
those things. Um,
Another thing to do is like you were saying, like the I know my truth, giving your kids as the healthy parent the opportunity to disagree with you in a healthy space, right? Um, well, this is what I think. I wonder what you think. And if they have a totally different opinion, just naming it. You and I have a different opinion about that. Interesting. Thanks for sharing with me how you feel. I'm really glad you told me.
or
Right?
like, and do it about small things. That's fine too. Like, what movie do we want to watch tonight? Oh, we disagree. What's your opinion? But you ask them first. If the edge is like trying to say their own opinion and have one, you
Hmm.
ask them first.
Hmm. Yeah. I always say to my son too, um, you don't have to like that just because I like it. So if you want to choose something else, you don't have to want to do a puzzle because I want to do a puzzle. If you want to have some alone time or you time, or if you want to do something else, or if you want to ask me to do something else, let's have a conversation. Just constantly normalizing that, hey, I get that it's easier to just agree with your dad sometimes. That was my experience too. If it doesn't feel safe to have a different opinion when you're not with me, I just want you to know it's always safe for you to have different opinions from me. Like I want to know you for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for telling me.
Hmm. Definitely.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes you can do like rating systems on like that can be an opinion giving kind of thing, or 0 to 10, right? Again, depending on kind of like but like again, it could be on like how much did you like the camp you went to? How much fun did you have at grandma's house?
Hmm.
How, but then you can, like when you've established the rating system, right? Like how much do you feel like I listened to you? Thumbs down, mom, and you're like, woo, okay, thank you for telling me.
Hmm.
Or right, for the kids who are like, I'm never going to tell you, right? You can be like, I think if we were going to rate me, right, I'm going to give myself a thumbs down because I don't think I listened to you very well.
Hmm.
Sometimes that modeling, telling the truth, helps them like experience that, like, that wasn't that good for you, I bet. And I bet you
Hmm.
didn't like it, or
Hmm.
that, like, that's giving kids permission to have their
Hmm.
own experience and their own opinion
Yeah.
in a relationship that's like not going to explode because.
Hmm. Yeah. And this just made me think of something else you and I were talking about last week. All asking our kids like, what can I do better as your mom? What's something that I can do better as your mom? The answer that I got the other day was, I want like a teensy bit more alone time. My poor kid, I love hanging out with him all the time. He's like, I want a just a teensy weensy bit more alone time, mom. Just constantly asking them for feedback, because in these situations, what kids come to learn really quickly is that the disordered parent is incapable of accepting feedback. Incapable. Can't hear it. They get really, really upset by it. They get either angry, or they get, make the child take care of them, their emotions, because they can't handle feedback. They just can't do it. Um, as I say so many times, like that cookie is fully baked. There is no room for change there. But asking our kids, like, what can I do to be a better mom to you? Showing them that feedback is welcome, right? So that you're modeling to them, hey, I want to hear, even if it's, hard, right? Um, I want more choice, or I don't feel like I ever get to pick what I eat. I want to pick what we eat more, or I want to stay up 5 minutes later, right? Um, Giving our kids the opportunity to feel like they have some autonomy, because all kids strive for autonomy, right? But especially in these situations, modeling, being open to feedback, and then, handling it gracefully, no matter what they say, right? I hear that you think it's really annoying that I ask you a lot of questions when you get in the car after school. Got it. What could I do differently? What do you want me to do when you get in the car? Yeah, it's huge.
Or right, you don't ask a question because they've just told you to stop asking questions, and you say, I'm going to ask less questions.
Thank you for your feedback, Claire.
Well, I'm just,
No, it's
I
so
love that.
true. I just did it. I just did it right there. I love that. It's so true. Yeah.
Right. Then, right, like I think that's like a lovely, like, because then the next time, that probably the next 4 times they get in the car, you can be like, well, how was it? Who did you play with? And then you can we can still catch ourselves. We can model imperfection and be like, oh my goodness, you had nothing to say when I asked you 4 questions, and I just remembered that I was going to ask you less. I love you. I'd love to hear about your day if you want to tell me.
Yeah.
You want to turn the radio on? Like,
Mhm. My mommy heart wants to know everything you just did at school today, but you told me that you don't want me to ask you those questions. And so, do you want to pick a song? And then normally they'll just start talking about their day because they've been given autonomy.
right. And with
Mhm.
older kids, sometimes that's like, I don't have enough information. I want to trust you. I ask questions because I don't, like that you're fine tuning that, like, hey, I want to support you on having a great life and hanging out who you want to hang out with. And you're still my responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Claire, this has been amazing. I mean, I think all protective parents are always searching for ways to connect with their children and to ensure that their kids have clarity without ever feeling like they're putting their kids in the middle or they're saying anything bad about their co-parent because that's just not healthy. And what we're trying to do is model healthy behavior. And so this is going to be so helpful for so many, protective parents. And I just want to, with an abundance of gratitude, thank you so much for donating your time and your wisdom and your expertise. It has just been lovely having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Kat, our info is on the last slide. Why
Oh,
don't you
yeah.
just click to it in case, right? Just in case.
Yep.
But like,
That's
we're
perfect. Yeah,
here and I'm, so grateful to have been here. Thank you for having me.
absolutely. Thank you. It was a joy. I just want to quickly say that the next Lunch and Learn events are in February 11th and 25th. And we're going to hear from a divorce financial planner and an attorney with some game-changing advice. So keep an eye out for the registration link via email. If you don't get my newsletter yet, head to the website and subscribe so that you can get notifications about conversations like this and some other great resources. Thank you all for your really lovely, vulnerable questions and your sharing. And I look forward to seeing you all in February. Thank you again, Claire.